The U.S. Navy says 41 countries have gathered in Bahrain for a major naval exercise in the Persian Gulf for what it calls deterring threats in the global energy shipping waterways. The drills began Sunday with onshore training and will then move to the Persian Gulf. The offshore exercise next week includes 35 ships, 18 unmanned underwater vehicles, and dozens of underwater explosives disposal divers, that is. In addition to minesweeping and flying drones, this year's event will include oil spill crisis management and protecting offshore terminals. The U.S. Navy says the drills are not tailored against Iran's naval presence in the Persian Gulf. The U.S.-led exercises mark the second major show of maritime cooperation in less than a year. The names of the countries taking part this year have not been released. Well, Jeff Steinberg with the Executive Intelligence Review joins us on the line from Washington. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Steinberg. Now, looking at how this drill is kicking off from Bahrain for what the U.S. has called deterring threats in the global energy shipping waterways, isn't a dictatorial authoritarian regime in Bahrain by itself a threat to energy shipping waterways, or whatever you want to call it?
Sure. What you're dealing with, though, is the continuation of the old British policy by the United States, and that policy involved supporting authoritarian regimes that were called the Stability Belt, the Sunni Stability Belt. And so, obviously, the timing of these maneuvers, on the one hand, they take place fairly regularly this time of year, but this show of force on the eve of the upcoming presidential elections in Iran is very obviously intended to send a very threatening and menacing message, particularly since it comes at the same time that there's talk of a Sunni Arab, Israeli, Turkish alliance of containment with the United States against Iran. And of course, we just saw Israel conduct 2 days of bombings against the neighboring sovereign country, Syria, on some kind of silly pretext of preventing a flow of weapons when there was no evidence of any weapons moving.
Right, Mr. Steinberg, it's not just these drills now, is it? We're also seeing a massive weaponization of Persian Gulf states by the U.S. We've seen multi-million-dollar arms sales going to the UAE, to Qatar, to Saudi Arabia. What do you make of that?
Well, two things, and it's coming from the United States and the British. The Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, a major sort of British government think tank, just published a report announcing that the British Navy and Air Force was returning to the area east of the Suez to back up the United States in its Asia pivot. So you have, in effect, an Anglo-American combined military operation, and one of the ways that the Persian Gulf countries are being charged an enormous amount of money is that they're being basically put in the position of buying massive amounts of very expensive military hardware that they have no capacity to use. So they'll be basically parking it there to be used by NATO and American forces in the event of a conflict.
Right, so we're going to have to leave it there now. That was Jeff Steinberg with the Executive Intelligence Review joining us on the line from Washington. Mr. Steinberg, many thanks indeed for your comments here on Press TV.